Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ayotunde Balogun.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, dies at 88. Tributes pour in from world leaders as the world mourns Pope Francis, the pontiff known as the voice for the poor. Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang asked elders and leaders of the state to collaborate in fighting insecurity in the state. And Governor Inuwa Yahaya orders an investigation into the Gombe Easter procession tragedy which left 5 people dead.
International Monetary Fund and World Bank open spring meetings amid global economic uncertainty.
On sports news tonight, the Italian Football Federation calls off all games across professional and amateur leagues following the death of Catholic Pontiff Pope Francis today.
And from the nation's capital, it's more on security as Jigawa State Governor Omar Namadi disagrees with former Defense Minister, retired General T.Y. Danjuma, says call for citizens to bear arms and self-defense will lead to anarchy.
We begin tonight with the sad passing of Pope Francis, who died today at the age of 88. The Vatican says the pontiff died of stroke and subsequent irreversible heart failure. Pope Francis, the first Latin American pontiff, renowned for his humility and concern for the poor, died at 7:35 this morning at his residence at Casa Santa Marta, a guest house at the Vatican where he had lived since his election in 2013. The Pope died after the holiest day in the Christian year, when the world's 1.3 billion Catholics celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The pontiff, who suffered from chronic lung disease and had part of one lung removed as a young man, was admitted to Gemelli Hospital on February the 14th this year for a respiratory crisis that developed into double pneumonia. He spent 38 days there, the longest hospitalization of his 12-year papacy. The Argentine-born Jorge Mario Bergoglio made his last public appearance yesterday, Easter Sunday, a day before his death, to bless thousands of people in St. Peter's Basilica, drawing wild cheers and applause. He performed the blessing from the same loggia where he was introduced on March 13th, 2013, as the 266th Pope. As the world comes to terms with the loss of Pope Francis, a figure who touched hearts across faiths and borders, we take a moment to reflect on his extraordinary life. From his unwavering advocacy for the poor to his tireless pursuit of peace, his legacy is one of humility and profound compassion. Tonight, we look back at the life and times of a pontiff who redefined the papacy.
Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on December 17, 1936, Pope Francis became the first pope from the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, the first from the Americas and the Southern Hemisphere, and the first born or raised outside Europe since the 8th century Syrian Pope Gregory II. His birthplace was Buenos Aires, Argentina, where he was ordained Catholic priest in 1969. And from 1973 to 1979, he was a Jesuit provincial superior in Argentina. He later became the Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998 and was created a cardinal in 2001 by Pope John Paul II. Following the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI on February 28th, a papal conclave elected Bergoglio as his successor on March 13th of the same year. He chose Francis as his papal name in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi. Pope Francis was known throughout his public life for his humility, emphasis on God's mercy, international visibility as Pope, concern for the poor, and commitment to interreligious dialogue. He was also known for having less formal approach to the papacy than his predecessors. For instance, choosing to reside in the Domus Sancti Mattei, known as the Martha Guest House, rather than in the papal apartments of the Apostolic Palace used by previous popes. Pope Francis made women full members of dicasteries in the Roman Curia. He was a critic of unbridled capitalism, consumerism, and overdevelopment, and made action on climate change a leading focus of his papacy. He is widely interpreted as announcing the death penalty as intrinsically evil, stating that the Catholic Church is committed to its abolition. Pope Francis was a peacemaker and a diplomat, helping to restore full diplomatic relations between the United States and Cuba. He negotiated a deal with China to defend how much influence the Communist Party had in appointing Chinese bishops and supported the cause of refugees. He called for peace in Gaza following the Israeli offensive after the attack by the Hamas militant group. He prayed for peace in Syria, in Yemen, and between Russia and Ukraine. Pope Francis prayed for those in troubled spots in Africa, using his Urbi et Orbi to draw world attention, first on certain occasions, then later formed part of his messages on a regular basis. He made trips to at least 72 countries around the world, including Kenya, Uganda, the Central African Republic, and Morocco, even South Sudan in Africa.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
His last foreign trip was to France, where he attended the closing of a conference on popular religiosity in the Mediterranean, organized by Cardinal François-Xavier Bustillo in Corsica. Much of his travels within the last 5 years have been within Italy, visiting Venice, Verona, Fasano, and Trieste. In the last 5 weeks, Pope Francis had been in and out of hospital, following a lengthy battle with double pneumonia and other health issues. He missed the Good Friday service at St. Peter's Basilica, but attended the Easter Sunday service, even though he did not give the sermon, was strong enough to wish Catholic faithful a happy Easter. He died Easter Monday morning at 7:35.
Indeed, an outpouring of grief has swept the globe since the passing of Pope Francis. At the age of 88, the pontiff's death on Easter Monday has sparked a wave of tributes as world leaders remember his life and legacy.
Leading the tributes on the late Pope is Argentina's President Javier Milei, who says he feels profound sorrow at the death of the leader of the Catholic Church. He said that despite minor differences that seem major today, having been able to know the Pope in his kindness and wisdom has been a true honor for him. President Milei, a staunch libertarian who had introduced sweeping austerity measures, had clashed with the Pope in the past. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu described the Pope as a humble servant of God and a guiding light for millions whose life was defined by mercy, justice, and love for humanity. He said the Pope's death, coming on Easter Monday, is a sacred return to his Maker at a time of renewed hope for Christians. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says Pope Francis had humility and a profound commitment to making the Church and the world a better place. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called him a modernist and says he was a devoted champion and loving father for Australian Catholics. Bangladesh's interim government says Pope Francis was a towering figure of moral clarity, humility, and compassion. Russian President Vladimir Putin remembers the late Pope as a defender of the highest values of humanism and justice, adding that he had had the privilege of communication with this understanding man on many occasions. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Pope Francis knew how to give hope, ease, suffering through prayer, and foster unity, adding that the late Pope prayed for peace in Ukraine and for Ukrainians. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he was deeply saddened to hear of the Pope's death, commenting, "His tireless efforts to promote a world that is fairer for all will leave a lasting legacy," and that the Pope's leadership in a complex and challenging time for the world and the Church was courageous, yet always came from a place of deep humility. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the Pope inspired millions far beyond the Catholic Church with his humility and love so pure for the less fortunate. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says he's deeply pained by the Pope's passing, and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi says Pope Francis was a voice of peace, love and compassion.
Here in Nigeria, the Catholic community has joined the rest of the world in mourning the death of Pope Francis. In Lagos, Archbishop Alfred Adewale Martins described the late pontiff as a breath of fresh air to the church, crediting him with bringing new energy and direction to its mission. Archbishop Martins praised Pope Francis for his deep humanitarian spirit and his relentless pursuit of global peace, saying his leadership left a lasting impact on both the church and the world.
The Holy Father, Pope Francis, that has passed on has been a fresh breath of life to the church in very many ways since he became Pope. He brought new dynamism to the church. He brought new dispositions to how we carry out our ministries as priests within the church, and the whole disposition of the entire church itself. One of the things that the Pope is outstanding for is his love for the poor, his willingness to speak out on behalf of the poor, whether on the economic front or in the front of social justice or any other area. He's always ready and always going out to speak on behalf of the poor, to advocate and to even take steps to ensure that the poor are not neglected, but rather they are put in the forefront of whatever it is that is being done. Whoever becomes Pope has to be God's own choice for us. We believe that the action of choosing a Pope is the action of the Holy Spirit itself working in the church and for the church on behalf of the church. We must just give glory and thanks to God for all that he was able to do during this period that he had the chance of a guy leading the church. We must give thanks so that even in our sorrow, even in our sadness, we cannot forget that the resurrection is the ultimate principle that guides our response to whatever happens in our life.
And Nigeria's Christian community is also in mourning following the death of His Holiness Pope Francis. The president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, Archbishop Daniel Oko, has extended heartfelt condolences to the Catholic Church worldwide, paying tribute to the Pope's extraordinary leadership and enduring compassion. Describing him as a towering figure of faith, Archbishop Oko notes the Pope's deep impact on Nigeria, from appointing local bishops and cardinals to championing interfaith dialogue and speaking boldly against poverty and corruption. In his statement, the CAN president reflects on the Pope's legacy of justice, humility, and love for humanity, a legacy that, he says, will continue to guide Nigerians in their spiritual and national journey. In part two, after the break, Governor Inuwa Yahaya orders an investigation into the Biliri Easter procession tragedy which left 5 people dead. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, dies at 88. Tributes pour in from world leaders as the world mourns Pope Francis, the pontiff known as the voice for the poor. Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang asks elders and leaders of the state to collaborate in fighting insecurity in the state. And Governor Inuwa Yahaya orders an investigation into the Biliri Easter procession tragedy which left 5 people dead. Let's head to Plateau State now, where Governor Caleb Mutfwang has called on elders and indeed leaders of the state to shun party politics, ethnic loyalty and religious sentiments and prioritize the interest of the state in finding lasting solutions to its security challenges. The governor made the call at the government house in Jos during a stakeholders meeting to discuss the security situation in Plateau, especially in the recent attacks in some communities of Bokos and Bassa local government areas. Present at the meeting were former governors of the state, former and present members of the National and State Assembly, members of the Security Council, traditional leaders, among other stakeholders. The governor urged the leaders to come together in addressing the security issues for the sake of Plateau and its people.
Is it the time that our hearts became united to deny this fallacy? I look forward to the day any of us will be picked upon, whether Muslim or Christian, irrespective of ethnic loyalty and identity, that we will say the same thing for the world to hear. That what is happening on the plateau is nothing short of genocide perpetrated by terrorists, and that we need to say it. Because if we don't speak with one voice, there are many advisors who will advise even Mr. President to believe that we are the aggressors, that we don't like to accommodate visitors. I think we need to rub hearts together. I want to appeal to all of us. This is the time to show that you are a lover of Plateau. This is the time that we must hold one another's hands and don't throw one another under the bus.
Meanwhile, more observers continue to raise their voices over the killings in Plateau, and this time, Plateau Church Denominational Leaders Forum is calling on the federal government to fulfill its constitutional responsibility to protect lives and property of citizens and strengthen the capacity of the state government to provide adequate security. The forum, during a peace walk in Jos to protest the brutal killings in some communities of Bokos and Bassa local governments, is also demanding immediate intervention of the federal government with recommendations for the establishment and equipping of community policing outposts, as well as resettling displaced persons, among other recommendations.
Some residents in Plateau State, under the leadership of the Church Denominational Leaders Forum and the Christian Association of Nigeria Plateau State Chapter, are on a peace walk to protest renewed killings in the state and as a mark of honor for the dead and a cry for justice. The members of the church, dressed in black, red and white attire, commenced a peace walk from the Railfield roundabout, accompanied by the church leadership with songs of worship on the long walk. The peace walk terminates at the government house in Little Railfield, where Governor Caleb Mutfwang and members of the State Executive Council, including National and State Assembly members, received the protesters.
Our recommendation.
The chairman of the forum, who is also the president of Church of Christ in Nations, presents their demands to the governor for onward transmission to President Bola Tinubu.
The federal and state governments should conduct a thorough and transparent investigation into these terrorist attacks. These include identifying and prosecuting not only the direct perpetrators, but also their sponsors, financiers, and collaborators.
The governor, in response, assures them the message will reach the president, as well as emphasizing government's determination in ensuring that the people are provided with adequate security.
I want you to know that Mr. President has assured me that he wants wants to see an end to this cycle of violence. And I, as your governor, I want to tell you again this afternoon that I didn't come to observe burial ceremonies. I came that the glory of Plateau will be restored.
The Peace Walk, tagged Holy Protest, is to call on government's attention to the incessant attacks and killings and to demand for peace, justice and security for every life in Plateau State and across Nigeria.
President Bola Tinubu has arrived at Abuja, the nation's capital, following his 2-week working visit to France and the UK. President Bola Tinubu was received by senior officials of his administration when he arrived at the presidential wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Now let's head to Gombe State, where Governor Yahaya has ordered a full-scale investigation into the tragic incident that marred the Easter celebrations in Biliri, claiming 5 lives and leaving several others injured. The tragedy unfolded when a trailer loaded with goods rammed into a religious procession along the Gombe-Yola highway. While consoling the Biliri Christian community, Governor Yahaya assured that justice will be served swiftly and pledged that the state would emerge from the tragedy stronger and more united. In the aftermath, tension escalated as irate youth set the truck ablaze and clashed with police, leading to looting and chaos before security forces restored order. This incident echoes similar tragedies in past festive seasons, prompting renewed calls for safety reforms during public religious gatherings. Authorities have already commenced a thorough investigation into the causes of the incident, as residents are being urged to remain calm and uphold peace and the rule of law. In Benue State, it's been a difficult week indeed for residents of Ukum and Logo local government areas following attacks in some of the communities. Another survivor from the coordinated attacks has died, with 12 more corpses recovered, bringing the casualty figures now to 72. In a telephone conversation with Channels Television in Benue, Governor Hyacinth Alia says security agencies are making inroads to the affected communities and residents returning to access their homes. Worried about the rising number of the persons killed so far, Governor Alia reiterates the urgent need for the federal government to step up surveillance to prevent more attacks. He also restates his call for information sharing on any intelligence that can help prevent attacks on the people, as security agencies may need the cooperation from communities to respond to such threats. So let's now head to the nation's capital now, and Millicent Walker is standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Great to see you, Millicent. Over to you.
Same here, Ayotunde. Many thanks. And we continue with security, where the Jigawa State Governor Umar Namadi is pushing back against calls by former Defense Minister, retired General T.Y. Danjuma, urging citizens to bear arms in self-defense. Speaking on Channels Television's breakfast program, Sunrise Daily, Governor Namadi warned that such a move could worsen Nigeria's security challenges. He insists that peace and reconciliation efforts are already underway, adding that the current situation does not warrant civilians taking up arms.
Well, he's a very senior security person. But I think if you say citizens be allowed to defend themselves, I think you are causing anarchy. But I don't know. He's a very senior security person that needs to be respected, and his words are very, very important, need to be analyzed. But I felt the issue is the government is doing its best in the security architecture and the security arrangement. Like I said, when we came in, like what we did in Jigawa, if you allow the people to defend themselves, that means you are causing crisis between the farmers and the herders. But when we came in, we decided to employ a lot of strategies, a lot of tactics, including dialogue, including trying as much as possible to engage the traditional rulers, to engage the both the farmers and the herders axis. And then we sat down, we agree, we reach a consensus, and we establish standing committees that work and being able to reconcile the people. And then people have understood that, yes, all the years they have spent, more than 25 years they have spent fighting themselves, killing themselves is not important. And now they are able to work together, they are able to interact together, they are able to do their normal life together. So I think the government is doing its best on this line, both at the federal and different state level. So the issue of asking people to defend themselves, I think we have not reached that level yet.
Still ahead on the news at 10, International Monetary Fund and World Bank open spring meetings amid global economic uncertainties. That's all business news. Do join us again. You're watching the news at 10, coming to you from Abuja studios. Nigerians have been reminded of the need to stay positive and hopeful despite the unfolding events in the country. This is part of the Easter message delivered by the spiritual leader of the Household of God Church, Reverend Chris Okotie, at an Easter service where he also said that the resurrection of Christ is able to reset the country's political imbalance and economic instability.
Worshippers arrived at Household of God Church, Lagos, for the special Easter service. As typical of such services, songs of praise and worship rent the air, accompanied by a lot of dancing to celebrate the risen Christ. Reverend Chris Okotie also leads the congregants on a musical journey, declaring the goodness of God and His supremacy over all.
I don't know why He cares for me. I don't know why He prays for me. I wanted to fly. Hey, 'cause I don't deserve it. Hey, am I singing? Oh. Come on now. I know what.
While delivering his message, he encourages the congregants to keep the faith and remain positive as old things are passed away.
A little better. This is Resurrection Sunday. If you're dancing, until you let God allow some things to pass in your life, new things will not begin. You've got to let the Spirit let go of the past so that you can go to the present and into your future.
And before the service winds down, he shares another message for the country.
Easter is a futuristic phenomenon that you can telescope into our past to reset our present. And to that extent, we have faith that God is with Nigeria. Because Easter, the resurrection of the Lord Jesus at Easter, is able or has the capacity to reset our political imbalances, our economic disequilibrium, and then to galvanize Nigeria to a place of visible, maybe superiority or preeminence within the African hemisphere. And so to that extent, I say, let us continue to be strong and of a good courage and to trust God that He has not abandoned Nigeria and He's faithful and He will do even as we have requested. Happy Easter to everybody.
The Easter celebration marks a very significant event in Christianity, one of sacrifice, commitment to the cause of bridging the gap between man and God, sealed by Christ's death and resurrection.
And for more about those global economic pressures, it's more on Business News with Will Ibong.
Thank you, Millicent. Now, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank Group have kicked off their spring meetings in Washington, D.C., running from April 21 to 26. And the week-long gathering brings together global leaders and experts to address key issues around development, the global economy, and financial markets. This year's meeting opens against a backdrop of economic uncertainty following U.S. President Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs on over 150 countries, many of them developing nations like Jordan and Sri Lanka, which are currently under IMF reform programs. The move has drawn criticism including a rare rebuke from IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, who expressed concern over the impact of the so-called reciprocal tariffs on global trade. And the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPP, has rejected a bill by the Raw Materials Research and Development Council, RMRDC, currently before the National Assembly, seeking to ban primary product exports without 30% local value addition and restrict raw material imports available locally. CPP warns that the bill could hurt exporters, risk thousands of jobs, and worsen manufacturing challenges driven by high cost, not raw material shortages. It calls the proposal simplistic and damaging. The group insists trade policy isn't RMRDC's mandate and urges the National Assembly to halt the bill, calling for better policy coordination and focus on boosting competitiveness. Meanwhile, Nigeria's manufacturing output rose sharply to 33.43 trillion naira in the second half of 2024, a 34.9% increase driven largely by inflation and rising prices, according to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN. However, real growth was modest at 1.7%, reaching 7.78 trillion naira, as challenges like high production costs and weak demand persisted. Capacity utilization improved slightly to 57%, while local sourcing of raw materials increased to 57.1%, reflecting efforts to cut reliance on costly imports. Real investment in the sector, however, fell by 35.3% year-on-year to 658.81 billion naira, despite a slight recovery in the second half. Inventory of unsold goods jumped by 87.5% to 2.14 trillion naira, but eased by nearly 28% in the second half, suggesting a pickup in sales. MAN warns that inflation, forex scarcity, and low investor confidence remain major threats to the sector's growth. Now, as part of efforts to sanitize the expatriate quota ecosystem in Nigeria, the federal government has introduced new reforms that will take effect from May the 1st to curb the number of violations within that environment. This information was given by the Director General of the Nigeria's Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Mr. Adewale Smart Onyeride, who was a guest on our Business Morning program, where he also mentioned that the enforcement of the reforms would take effect from August this year.
We have people that have abused the temporary work permits. Temporary work permits for 3 months. So you have people that have used temporary work permits to be in the country for over 5, 6, 7 years. So every 3 months you renew, every 3 months you renew. So the idea is, if you want to stay for 1 year, why not just apply for your SEPA card and stay for 1 year? And if you want to apply, you want to stay for 2, 3 years, why just keep exploiting the temporary work permit? Because with temporary work permit, you don't pay. So you can stay for 3 months, and then after 3 months, you renew your temporary work permit. So the rigmarole rule continues. So somebody that is not qualified can actually be in the country for 10-20 years using the temporary work permit. So he said they are going to also deal with that so that they can monitor who comes in and they can monitor who goes out. And also of interest is the citizenship process. If you desire to be a citizen of the country, the rule has changed a bit, the processes has changed, all with the focus of, one, protect genuine investors.
Speaking about protection, China has warned countries like Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea against making trade deals with the U.S. that harm Beijing's interest, following President Trump's steep tariffs on Chinese goods. China's Commerce Ministry called the U.S. tariffs economic bullying and vowed to take reciprocal action if any agreements undermine its position, stressing it won't accept being sidelined. While China says it remains open to talks, no meetings are planned. Now, most major global markets are still on Easter holiday, including Nigeria's NGX. Meanwhile, in the U.S., stocks slump as Trump's threat to fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell's over rate cuts adds to investors' concerns. Let's see how they perform today. And that's business news. It's back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Will. Still to come on the news at 10. More on Pope Francis looking at the life of Argentine-born Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Join us again. Welcome back. Indeed, the head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis, has died, as you already know. Well, the 88-year-old pontiff passed away this morning, almost a month after being diagnosed, or after being discharged, rather, from the hospital with double pneumonia. Well, here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international news and around the world in 5 from our London studios.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died at the age of 88.
Carissimi fratelli et sorelle.
Cardinal Kevin Farrell said, "Dear brothers and sisters, it is with profound sadness I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis."
Santo Padre Francesco.
His death comes after he appeared at St. Peter's Square on Sunday to wish Happy Easter to thousands of worshippers.
Cari fratelli e sorelle.
He was discharged from hospital last month after 5 weeks of treatment for an infection that led to double pneumonia. Pope Francis was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Argentina. In his early life, he worked as a nightclub bouncer and floor sweeper before graduating as a chemist. He was particularly prone to lung infections due to having part of one of his lungs removed at the age of 21. Ahead of becoming the head of the Catholic Church in 2013, he presented himself as a compromise candidate by appealing to conservatives while attracting the reformers with his liberal stance on social justice. Rejecting wealth and embracing those living in poverty, his early actions as Pope included washing the feet of the elderly and prisoners and advocating for the rights of refugees and migrants. But on many of the Church's teachings, Pope Francis was a traditionalist. During his tenure, Francis oversaw a rise in the number of Catholics worldwide, driven primarily by growth in Africa and the Americas. Crowds were gathering outside St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City as tributes from around the world poured in, including from King Charles III, who met the Pope privately earlier this month during his state visit to Italy. The King said he was deeply saddened to hear of his death, adding, "His Holiness will be remembered for his compassion, his concern for the unity of the Church, and for his tireless commitment to the common causes of all people of faith and to those of goodwill who work for the benefit of others."
Good morning. How are you? Find yourself? Yeah, thank you. Happy Easter to you, Father.
US Vice President J.D. Vance, who met the Pope on Easter Sunday, said his heart goes out to Christians. "I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill," he said. The White House said in a post on X, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis," while Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni praised him as a great man and said she had the privilege of enjoying his friendship, advice and teachings. A papal funeral has traditionally been an elaborate affair, but Pope Francis recently approved plans to make the whole procedure less complex, opting for a simple wooden coffin lined with zinc and scrapping the tradition of placing the Pope's body on a raised platform for public viewing. Francis will also be the first Pope in more than a century to be buried outside the Vatican.
Habemus Papa.
At 88, Pope Francis ended his term in office as the second oldest among all popes from the past 500 years. He will be laid to rest in the Basilica of St. Mary Major, one of the 4 major papal basilicas in Rome. Ukraine's military has reported Russian drone attacks on several regions overnight, hours after a 30-hour Easter truce declared by Moscow expired. The Ukrainian Air Force has issued raid alerts for Kyiv, as well as several other regions. Elsewhere in the southern city of Mykolaiv, the city's mayor said explosions were heard. Both Ukraine and Russia have accused each other of violating the temporary end to the fighting. And robots have run alongside humans at the Yizhuang half-marathon in Beijing. 21 humanoid robots designed by Chinese manufacturers raced next to thousands of runners, completing the 21-kilometer course. The winner was Tiangong Ultra, which crossed the line in 2 hours, 40 minutes and 42 seconds. Some robots completed the race while others struggled from the beginning. One robot fell at the starting line and lay flat for several minutes before getting up and taking off. The race was billed as the world's first robot half-marathon.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. The Italian Football Federation has postponed all games across professional and amateur leagues following the death of Pope Francis. Pope Francis, the first Latin American head of the Roman Catholic Church and a lifelong football fan, died after a brief battle with double pneumonia. The Italian Football Federation said Udinese's game at Torino, Fiorentina's visit to Cagliari, Genoa's match against Lazio and Juventus' trip to Parma will be rescheduled to a later date. The country's governing body hailed the Pope as an example of Christian charity and dignity in suffering, always close to the world of football. The Flying Eagles of Nigeria have arrived in the Egyptian capital city of Cairo as the 7-time African champions get set for the 17th Africa Under-20 Cup of Nations finals. A delegation of 24 players and 9 officials led by head coach Aliyu Zubairu touched down at the Cairo International Airport on Sunday evening. The Flying Eagles will face the young Pharaohs of Egypt on Tuesday as part of the build-up to the tournament built to take place from April 27th to May 18th. The team will begin their campaign at the Under-20 AFCON against Tunisia at the June 30th Stadium in Cairo on May 1st. The African Under-20 Cup of Nations serves as a qualifying tournament for the FIFA Under-20 World Cup finals scheduled from September 27th to October 19th in Chile. Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola has urged fans to break the noise and treat their remaining 5 Premier League games as cup finals. One of those teams are Tuesday's opponent, Aston Villa, who they face at the Etihad Stadium. Guardiola said Champions League qualification is on the line in that encounter. The Premier League's top 5 will qualify for Europe's elite club competition next season.
Play against my friend Luis Enrique PSG. Wow, I was really impressed. They can play low block and play away, but when they decide to go with the weapons they have, the speed they have, the set pieces, they're incredible, well organized with Unai. It's a final, and we need our people, because I think our people won the Champions League next season again. And hopefully can help us for the middle one. Don't wait. Sometimes we are sloppy. Sometimes we're not playing good. It's that now we need them. We need them desperately, to support us, to make noise and be in there all the time, because it's a final. Absolutely, it's a final for us.
And Barcelona coach Hansi Flick has warned that his side cannot afford any complacency in the home stretch of the La Liga title race. Barcelona hosts Real Mallorca tomorrow at the Olympic Stadium, and a win will take the Catalan giants 7-point clear at the top of the table. Flick said the race to the title is still open despite Barcelona's advantage over close rivals and defending champions Real Madrid. Barcelona have suffered a major injury blow as Robert Lewandowski has been ruled out of the tie with a muscle issue. And that sport is back to you, Ayo.
And the main news again. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died at the age of 88. And tributes have poured in from world leaders as the world mourns Pope Francis. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balukun. From all of us here, happy Easter. Do have a good night.